Every experienced prepper has made mistakes. I know I've made plenty, but fear not, I'm here to help you not repeat some of the mistakes that I've made and that many others have made. I'm going to detail the 9 most common prepper mistakes that I find newer and even some semi-experienced preppers make. Hell, I'm violating number 7 right now. Watch this video through from the beginning to the end, and I think that you will end up learning from some of the mistakes that we've made, and that can save you a lot of time, money, and frustration. The first and perhaps most fundamental mistake that new preppers make is not starting with a plan. Most preppers will use a buckshot approach to prepping, buying random pieces of gear without a clear strategy or set of priorities in mind. You want to be more like the sniper. You want to identify your target and find the clearest, most direct, fastest route to that target. Most people find themselves with the scattergun approach, whether they realize it or not, because it provides a set of dopamine hits. You buy the latest shiny gadget that somebody told you you need, you have some sort of sense of satisfaction from that. But that can wear off, and the more you prep, the more you learn, and it's not uncommon as you reach middle and more advanced levels of prepping to look back at that early gear and say, that was kind of dumb, or now I want to replace it with something that I understand to be better. Effective prepping starts with a clear list of the threats that are most likely to happen to you in your situation. And that can be driven by both your geographic location, your socioeconomic status, and even the time of year. Once you understand those risks, only then can you develop an actionable plan to reach goals. What's your primary aim? Is it to have 30 days of food and water, or is it to have an evacuation plan? Know where you want to go first. What's the most important thing to achieve first? Climbing a ladder only makes sense if it's on the right wall. Only you can make your personal preparedness plan. Well, I could help for a consulting fee, but you really don't need or even want that. You want to go through this process yourself. Give yourself a SWOT analysis. Assess your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The needs of a family living in Wisconsin, for example, are going to be very different than the needs of a young couple living in Miami. And what works for me in Maine is likely not going to work for someone in Arizona. There is not a single cookie cutter, one-size-fits-all approach to prepping. Granted, there are certainly similar approaches and strategies to prepping at large, but do you have family members that you need to take care of? Do you have pets? Do you have kids that are in college in a nearby state? Everyone's situation is a little bit different. A well thought out plan is your roadmap in a crisis. It guides your decisions, it prevents panic, and it ensures that you are making efficient, smart progress. Your plan doesn't have to be perfect from the start. Think of it more like a living document that adjusts to your changing and evolving situation. But you need that solid foundation from which to build. You'll still make mistakes, but you'll make fewer of them. Your approach will be methodical. Your purchases will be more wisely made and with purpose, and saving you money in the process. So before you buy another pack of batteries and more canned food, take a step back and ask yourself, do I have a plan? And if the answer is no, it's time to hit the drawing board. The second biggest mistake that I see new preppers make is an overemphasis on firearms. And while firearms certainly have their place in preppers' preps, it's easy to get into the trap of thinking that more guns equates to better preparedness. I have a theory on why I think that's the case. A lot of new preppers come to the world of prepping via the firearms world. So they may go buy their first firearm or their second firearm, take a personal defense shooting class, become familiar with a handgun, and it's not a big leap to then move into more broad-based personal preparedness. But they're more inclined to buy more guns before oftentimes thinking about things like stored food, stored water, stored communications, that sort of thing. And odds are significantly higher that in a short-term or even medium-term event, you're going to be moving to preps like food and water and comms well before you're ever going to be moving to firearms. Here's the bottom line. Balance is key. And so, yes, firearms have a place in the prepping world. However, you don't want to over-focus on those at the expense of other supplies and building skills. Remember that prepping is prepping for a broad range of SHTF type events, even just basic natural disasters. You're not going to be able to replace food, water, skills and abilities with bullets. Not only that, but firearms aren't cheap. Ammunition is not cheap. scopes, slings, all of that stuff adds up to significant amounts of money very fast. And if that's where you're focusing, then you're missing the opportunity to expand your preparedness significantly more by buying inexpensive things like Mylar bags, oxygen absorbers, rice, wheat berries, beans, etc. Now let's turn our attention to food storage and another common pitfall that many preppers make, and that's starting their long-term food storage with freeze-dried foods. Now certainly freeze-dried foods have a place in a prepper's food storage. They're lightweight, they're convenient, and they have exceptionally long shelf lives, 20, 25, 30 years. However, freeze-dried food is expensive, it requires water to rehydrate, and you're not going to want to be in a situation where you're relying on freeze-dried food day after a crisis. That's going to get pretty old pretty fast. An effective food storage plan is diverse, and it's going to involve a lot of the foods that you already eat today. I always advise folks to start by stocking extra of the food that they already buy, that they eat on a regular basis. Put that in a food pantry, because after a crisis, it's seamless to continue eating the foods you already have. You stop doing that when you get to a point where you're missing expiration dates. So if you're buying so many canned beans and you eat canned beans on a regular basis, but you can't cycle through the expiration date, then you stop. But really the most cost-effective way to store large amounts of food for maximum period of time is to stock rice, beans, grains, that sort of thing, and adding spices to those and little additives that you can make dishes so that you don't suffer palate fatigue after a crisis, eating the same food over and over and over again. And that's another spot where really freeze-dried foods can help. If you've got powdered eggs, for example, you can mix those into other dishes to spice them up. Your rice and beans could be dinner, rice and eggs could be breakfast. So again, while freeze-dried foods have their place, it's not where you want to start. Another common pitfall many preppers make is trying to do too much all at once. It's natural to feel a sense of urgency when you begin your prepping journey, but if you're not careful, that will lead to frustration, stress, and even financial strain. Prepping is a marathon, not a sprint, and you want to do it incrementally over time. If you do it too much too fast, you can buy the wrong gear, for example, overlook important details, and not have your priorities correctly in order. The key is to start small and focus on one aspect of preparedness at a time. So for example, if you're brand new to prepping, you could focus on securing 1 week's worth of food and water. And then you can start to stack some of those preps incrementally. So for example, if you've got a week's worth of water stored, well, now you can buy a portable water filtration system, for example. That is going to give you an opportunity to supplement your stored water or to secure water after your stored water is depleted. And you also have the advantage then of sort of what I call the stacking. You've stacked a water prep, so to speak, and now you've got a portable water filter system that you can put in a backpack to start building a bug-out bag, which would be a much better approach than just buying an off-the-shelf bug-out bag that somebody else has made for you that may not have the best gear for you. And that's an example of wasted money. Set realistic goals and a timeline, and that's going to help you see the path that we were talking about toward the preparedness where you eventually want to be, and being able to check off little checkpoints where, okay, I've reached this level of preparedness, my next target is here. That's going to build a sense of accomplishment that is going to help you stick to prepping, because it's really easy to get burnt out with prepping. Take time with prepping, have fun with it, let it become a hobby and a lifestyle, a way of life. It doesn't have to be all-consuming. The world's not going to end tomorrow. At least I don't think it is. But you get my point. Another big mistake that I see new preppers making is neglecting personal skills. In the rush to accumulate gear and equipment, it's easy to overlook our greatest asset, which is our mind. Skills like basic first aid, home repair, gardening, hunting, fishing, outdoor survival skills. These are things that you can't purchase off any shelf. You can't order these things online, and they take time and practice in order to fully develop. Start by identifying the skills and abilities that you would most likely need in your situation or where you live. For example, if you live in an area that is prone to natural disasters, maybe you want to learn some natural disaster recovery strategies. Also try to cross-train with members of your family, your neighbors, your friends, that sort of thing, because 3 is better than 2, 2 is better than 1. On top of that, it also makes learning more fun. Skill building also is a great opportunity to actually put to use the prepper gear and supplies that you purchase. Camping is a great example, backpacking, geocaching, even some stuff you can do in an urban environment. What's the point in buying a handheld ham radio if you don't actually become familiar with using it? When the grid goes down and you need to communicate to someone miles away, you need to be proficient in it. Another example would be if you're one of these fortunate preppers who has the idyllic bug out location in the middle of nowhere, but you may or may not be able to actually reach it by vehicle when total collapse happens. Maybe you want to spend some time learning how to navigate the landscape, how to build shelter on the way to your shelter. Enroll in some workshops, meet people. If you've got kids, enroll them in, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, whatever. Anything that can build these types of skills is going to be a great asset. And you get outside. You get some physical activity. You're not going to be able to rely on information from the internet when the grid goes down. So you need to practice these things so they stick in your head. You can't buy your way to different skill sets. It takes time and it takes practice, but the upside, it's usually low or no cost. Another common mistake new preppers make is failing to adequately account for water needs after a crisis. It's common to move to food storage, but water is an even greater priority. The human body can only live for 3 days without water. That makes it a top priority in anyone's personal preparedness plan. Now, having a water preparedness plan is more than just buying some gallon jugs and putting them in a closet, or in this case, large water storage tanks. Get an idea for what it is you need. How many people are going to need to drink, to wash, to cook? And build water redundancies. Have stored water for sure, but also have the means to purify and filter water. And also become familiar with nearby natural water sources, places that you can go get water in the natural environment and bring it back to process in your home to purify and make potable. And lastly on water, make sure that you know ways and maybe even practice ways of conserving water so that after a crisis you can extend your supply. Now, another mistake that a lot of preppers make is poor operational security, commonly known as OPSEC. In the excitement of preparing, buying new gear, practicing new skills, people want to talk about that. They want to share that online. They want to discuss it with friends, show them, their food storage. That's fun, and it is encouraged to some degree to promote awareness and to just have fun with preparedness, but you have to be very careful about that. Now, obviously, I'm not the person that you want to follow as an example on operational security, because here I am showing my face, talking about prepping to anyone that wants to watch it. There was a time when people were still following blogs, and that's how I got started with an online presence around prepping. People would come and read, and it was easier than to hide behind words, so to speak. But unfortunately, everyone stopped reading, it seems, and instead of reading articles about prepping, now everyone wants to watch a YouTube video or even just 60-second clips on TikTok. So I've unfortunately had to adapt to the times to move to video, compromising my operational security. Everyone who knows me personally knows that I do this, and I'm particularly subject now, of course, to the SHTF happens, we're going to come to your house. I've built a situation here where people can come to my house and they're not going to find me. This is a concern that a lot of people need to keep at the forefront of their minds, operational security. Because when SHTF does happen, you don't want those knock, 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 hey, can we come sleep in your basement? Revealing all those details of your personal preps makes you a target. Now, of course, you have to strike a balance with all of this. You want to be able to share and encourage personal preparedness with family members and with friends and even neighbors if you can trust them and they're of a like mind. But you have to balance that with your need for discretion. Now, I wouldn't encourage you to entirely become a hermit and not divulge anything whatsoever. I think this was a greater concern back in the day. A lot more people are prepping now, but you can still be discreet about it. You can encourage people in comment sections on social media, ask questions yourself. How else are you going to learn this thing? And a lot of people I found in the prepping community like to help one another. So strike that balance, and that balance might be, in some cases, not divulging the full extent of your personal preps. And this may be particularly important for people who, like me, are already out there and our friends already know that we're preppers. Have your preps, maybe, and have some other preps somewhere else that no one knows about. But again, don't use me as the shining example here, because here I am showing my face to the world. I've sacrificed my operational security for the greater good of the prepper community. I'm like a martyr. I think that deserves a subscription and the like. One of the overlooked areas of prepping is rotation of supplies. Preppers will stock plenty of food, water, and other essentials, but fail to manage their inventory. Supply rotation is crucial for a few reasons. First, it helps manage expiration dates for food and medical supplies. Secondly, rotating your supplies ensures that you're familiar with your supplies. If you're rotating those stocks, you're using them and you're becoming more familiar with how much you need and how frequently you use it. To effectively manage your supplies, make sure you're using the first in, first out approach. You're taking the oldest supplies out first and replacing them with new ones. And that will ensure that your supplies are always up to date and as fresh as possible. Additionally, regular rotation helps you identify gaps in your supplies or where you might be overstocking some items, and that allows you to adjust as you go. And the other benefit, of course, is that you are assessing your supplies. You're ensuring that they are secure, in good shape. Rodents haven't gotten into your food supply, for example. Things may have not been compromised by water. You get the idea. The last critical mistake that new preppers often make is failing to adequately plan for medical needs. This can be a grave oversight. Medical preparedness is more than just having a medical kit, however. You need to know what goes into them, how to use the equipment, and you also need to account for any specific health needs that you or your loved ones might have. And another important aspect of medical preparedness is having sufficient antibiotics stocked, because after an SHTF event, antibiotics will be hard to access, and many SHTF type events can lead to conditions where antibiotics are needed. Now there's good news. A lot of antibiotics can be purchased right online now, entirely legal. Link in the description. Legit human grade antibiotics. Preppers have often had to rely on things like stocking fish antibiotics or begging a doctor to prescribe some for just in case situations, or going to Mexico and buying them and bringing them back, that sort of thing. It's now easier than ever. Ensure you have the sufficient supply to get you and your family through a 1 to 3 month crisis. It's also important to have basic first aid knowledge. Know how to help someone that's choking. Know how to splint a broken arm. And don't forget about mental health. Many people have mental health issues, stresses, anxiety. Today, magnified that 100-fold after an SHTF event. So you need to know the skills and or tools, i.e. medications, to manage that stress and those mental health issues that will invariably grow after a crisis. Follow the advice I've laid out in this video, and I'm sure you'll save some time, money, and frustration. If there are other mistakes that you think I've missed, that you've made, that you could advise other preppers not to make, drop those in the comments. Prep on.